Good evening. Our top story, overcrowded student housing. It's the norm in some neighborhoods, but the city has vowed to crack down. We'll have more on that in a minute. Also in today's news, it's primary day for the special Senate election, and so far turnout is extremely low. Also today, speaking to reporters, President Obama defended the FBI's years-old investigation into the radicalization of marathon bombing suspect Tamerlan Tsarnaev. But now officials have cited the owner of an Alston building where a Boston University student was killed in a fire Sunday. Investigators are still trying to figure out what caused the blaze, which also hurt 15 people. But the discovery that at least 19 people were living in this two-family home has brought new attention to the issue of overcrowded student housing. Fire crews were still on the scene in Alston today, 2 days after the fire at this home killed 22-year-old BU senior Binlin Lee. There were reportedly 19 people living at 87 Linden, 6 BU students. Alston resident Adam Moldauer says overcrowding is the norm in the area.
But that's just sort of how everything is here. It's everybody's just sort of crammed into as small of a space as possible.
It's been 5 years since Boston passed an ordinance capping the number of undergraduate students living together at 4. But the lack of mandatory inspections and absentee landlords makes the law tough to enforce.
We go up there, we see smoke detectors off, so we got to put them back up. The biggest problem is kids taking those things down.
Steve Hocko is the super for a building just around the corner from the fire. He says while landlords and owners should do more, students often try to bend the rules.
They think, because it's their apartment, they can move everybody in. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and, stuff like that happens. When you see it happen over and over, it doesn't surprise you.
Just over a year ago, a fire across the street from 87 Linden sent 7 students to the hospital and left 1 with neurological problems. And according to records from the city's Inspectional Services Department, 2 other properties on the same block received overcrowding complaints in the past 3 years.
I think a lot of people often get taken advantage of by a lot of the landlords around here because it's like their first kind of experience getting an apartment.
BU student Lily Smith lives across the street from 87 Linden and says students are often stuck between landlords and inspectors.
They don't really know what a good price is to pay or when to call in violations and things like that. And at the same time, you're also desperate for somewhere to live because the school year is starting and you have to go somewhere.
The city of Boston is now adding more teeth to its overcrowding ordinance with a new program requiring owners to register their rental units annually. The process starts tomorrow. All right, and with me now are Boston's Assistant Housing Commissioner, Indira Alvarez, and Gregory Vassell of the Greater Boston Real Estate Board. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Well, Indira, your office knows about this. I mean, this doesn't come as a surprise. And every September when the kids start moving in, you can see it happening. But do you have enough inspectors to go around? Has that neighborhood been inspected recently?
So the neighborhood, we have inspectors that are assigned to different neighborhoods throughout the entire city. We have a couple of inspectors that are assigned to the Alston-Brighton area. And on a regular basis, because of the number of students that are moving in certain areas like Alston-Brighton, we do have initiatives on a regular basis. We go out to the colleges and universities to try to educate the students that are moving off campus to make sure they understand what are the rules and regulations, what are some of the violations to look out for. So we try to do other things other than just going out to do inspections, sort of get it ready for proactive, some sort of a proactive approach.
Do you know if that building had been inspected recently?
No, there was no complaints that we received recently from any occupants in the building of any issues of violations.
Okay, but that's my question then. So it has to be somebody within the building file a complaint, because why would they file a complaint? Why would the landlord file a complaint? So you don't do just unannounced inspections, knock, knock, let me see who's living here.
Well, that is the reason for the amendment of the ordinance, why we amended it in December, because it was one of those things where we left it up to the landlord to tell us that there's been a turnover, that there's issues, and, call inspection or service will come out and write you up. That's what, the previous ordinance was in place. But right now, we're basically saying we need you to have an inspection done of your property.
Every year.
Well, the inspection is on a 5-year cycle. What we need you to do is the registration part of the ordinance is every year. And in that registration, you're attesting to, you're basically saying that I will abide by every rule and regulations in the city of Boston. You don't, we will cite you $300 for every month that you don't register. We do have also the chronic offender piece of it, that landlords that are not on a constant basis are violating every rule that there is in the city of Boston.
You know, Greg, I was a little bit sympathetic to the superintendent there, who was saying that he was a building superintendent, not of that building. But he said, you know, the kids come in, they take down the smoke detectors. I mean, I don't blame them. You have a hot stove going, and suddenly, you know it, or the oven, and the thing goes off. It's like, they just, and they're mostly battery operated. They're not hardwired like a lot of the city buildings are in downtown anyway. So, I mean, the students are partly responsible.
I think educating students about the safety violations is very difficult. You know,
well, they know. They're taking them down on purpose.
They take them down on purpose, but they never think a tragedy is going to happen to them in the middle of the night, like that poor woman who perished, you know, over the weekend. And it's almost an impossible thing to enforce. An ISD inspector shows up, knocks on the door. People don't have to let them in. So they don't know how many people are actually in the facility, how many people are living there. They've tried to look at mailboxes. It's really hard. And even if they were thorough, all they need to do is miss one and have that one turn into a tragedy. And immediately they're under the gun and they're under the microscope. It's really hard. I think more needs to be done with the colleges and the universities to really educate the kids, because this is their lives. It's every parent's nightmare.
Well, I was wondering about that, too, in Europe, because I know the universities aren't directly responsible. I mean, if somebody makes a decision to move off campus, well, that's a decision they've made, and apparently it's between the student and their parents. However, it seems to me that the universities should know exactly where they're living. They have an address, and they should know whether that's, you know, a safe occupation situation.
There are quite a few universities that are making an effort to come together on a monthly basis. There's a coalition, the Student Off-Campus Coalition, that meet with city officials and the different universities to talk about what are some of the issues, what are some of the things that we could work with on a constant basis. It's not we're going to educate them in September. We're going to do this as often as we possibly can. And we've had quite a few of the other, whether it's BU, BC, Northeastern, where they put certain information on their website to make sure that the students, especially the new ones coming in, you have to sign this piece of paper that you've read this information, that you understand what it means to be a good neighbor, what it means to abide by the rules and regulations of the city of Boston. We're doing the best we can, and we're putting a lot of information out there to make sure they read it so that you understand that, you know, safety is priority.
Emily, one of our biggest concerns is illegal apartments.
Oh, yeah.
There are a number of illegal, you know, we know that there are landlords out there that pack kids into houses, and that's not, you know, there are rules at the state level, at the city level that they need to follow. Some don't. And that's a concern that we have. And we don't, you know, I don't know if this house had illegal apartments in it or not. You know.
Well, she was cited today for illegal rooming house, which means that she had far too many people for, I mean, she was way over occupancy for whatever the house was.
So that's a huge problem.
Okay, but let's say there's a police incident or something at one of these houses. A neighbor calls, and the police come to the door. Does that doesn't prompt an inspection of some sort?
If there's a police incident would be different, because it would be outside the administrative authority of ISD. It would be sort of a different, you know, enforcing the public
But they wouldn't
peace.
necessarily be looking for an occupancy issue.
Not necessarily, but it could open the door, and then the city passed the problem properties ordinance a couple years ago, and the police have worked hand in hand with landlords to try to, you know, zero in on properties like that. So it could open the door in a little bit of a different way. You saw that a lot when the student ordinance passed up on Mission Hill. That dealt with a lot of Northeastern students back several years.
All right, so Indira, we just heard everybody in that neighborhood on Linden Street, and we had some people in our building who used to live there when they were kids. They say that that's a problem area. So will that prompt inspections of those buildings now?
Absolutely. I mean, we started a couple of days ago to go out and flyer the neighborhoods and let people know, let the students know that you can call ISD, and we'll go out and we'll conduct an inspection.
Yeah, I saw those flyers.
And we will continue, you know.
But they don't want to get thrown out of their apartments.
But there is laws in place in the state of Massachusetts. You cannot be thrown out of your apartment because you called inspection of services. You're exercising your right. A landlord cannot retaliate against you just because you called us because of violations in your unit.
If the inspection guy goes in and says, oh, there's way too many people living here, then somehow or other they're going to lose their spot, and they don't, you know, it's a catch-22.
But then at the end of the day, I'm sorry, at the end of the day, it's one of those issues of safety. Do I leave you in that apartment that is illegal, or do I tell you, okay, and we work with the universities. They do help us in trying to find alternative options for the students.
I think you're driving at the situation that happened in Chinatown a while back, where the people actually had to be removed from the building because it was, condemned. You know, those are really tough situations, and then the city is stuck trying to find places for those people to live. You know, and especially, you know, those people are living here in the city, but students, you know, they may be from other parts of the country, so it's tough. But they have to stand up. They have to be able to have habitable environments. Now, on the flip side, college kids can sometimes live to the extreme. So, you know, they may do things to an apartment that a landlord can fix, and the next week again, you know, they're broken again. So when you get into the business of renting to students, it's a tough business. You really have to be diligent, and you have to be on top of it, because you have great liability.
Of course, we don't even know. Well, do we know if the fire alarms were working in this building? We don't even know.
I mean, we heard, you know, through the news that it was working and it was going off or what have you, but that's still under investigation, so we don't really know.
May not even be an issue. Do you know what I mean? It's like there was a lot of people there, but it was a bad fire. Yeah,
and then we have to consider space issues, whether or not it was enough space for the number of people that were in there. I mean, were there locks on the doors? There's a lot of different issues when you're talking about overcrowding.
That's true.
And the woman that perished, I believe, was on the third floor, and there was only an internal staircase to exit the building. There was no other way for her to get out.
Yeah, and there are all kinds of rules about that in the city of Boston, about how many egresses and all that you need. All right, sad story. Go Vessel, Indira Alvarez, thank you so much.
Thank you.